The sun has left and forgotten me. It's dark, I cannot see.
Your stories don't define you, but how you tell them will. I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and chief storymaker at Elkins Consulting. Today, my guest is a man I've known on LinkedIn for a long time. His name is Joe Emery. And when I heard that he was getting some crap for being honest on LinkedIn, I knew I had to talk to him on my podcast. He's been honest about his frustrations and struggle with the world of employment in the last 5 or 6 years, things being so up and down and uncertain. And he was actually sharing how it's affecting him. And it's not surprising at all. There are always people who feel like they need to let us know what's wrong with us, even if they're total strangers and they have no idea the rest of the context. So listeners, you're in for a treat today because he's funny, he's smart, and kind. And I think most of us could learn a little something from what he has to share with us. So, Joe, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know that I love to start the conversation by asking my guests to share something about themselves that most people don't know about them. And I do that because we have a tendency, and this is a prime example, we have a tendency now more than ever to anchor people in a particular label or particular time based on one interaction, one post we see on social media, one book we find out that they read, or one sticker on their car. And I don't think that's fair. And I know I do that sometimes. I see a particular sticker on a car and I have an immediate judgment about who that person is. But we all need to take a step back from that because I don't like to be labeled by one signal that I'm sending, and nobody else does either. So by sharing something about yourself that most people don't know about you, we're offering an inner glimpse into the complexity of who you are. So what do you think? Do you have something you can share with us?
Yeah, well, my friends will obviously know this, but people listening probably won't. I would say my absolute passions outside of work are music and film. My favourite film is Jaws. I'm a massive James Bond fan. I have been since I was a tiny kid. I run a James Bond fan club that's got a big reach around the world, and music. I'm also a Beatles nut.
So I take it you have a few photos of Abbey Road.
Yeah. I like any excuse to walk across that crossing, and I've never gone to that place where there's not people walking across the crossing and taking photos. So I don't know if a time like that exists. I don't think it does.
Well, it's just so iconic. I love that. I did know about the James Bond thing because I don't participate as much as I kind of just view and observe what's going on with that fan club. But I did join it a long, long time ago. And I think the reason I joined it was because I had written about picking up my flute after 30-something years of not playing it because I had an urge. I sing with a 60s band, and I had an urge to learn the Pink Panther theme song on my flute.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I knew that it would fit in one of our medleys that we do with the 60s band, which is a spy medley that includes, I'm forgetting the name of the first song.
Man from Uncle?
No, it's, I'll remember it later. But then we go into the James Bond theme song, and then I sing Secret Agent Man. And now we begin with the first lick from the Pink Panther theme song, and I play it on my flute with the band. And everybody recognizes it.
Yeah, very recognizable.
But I remember writing about it, and you reached out. You said, you should join my James Bond.
Okay.
I'm like, yes, I would totally do that.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, that's great. That definitely adds some complexity to who you are.
Yeah.
So when did that start? Like, what was the movie?
Or do you know what
song?
people ask me what my first James Bond film is? It would have been on TV in England, ITV. But Mum said ever since I was 3 years old, I used to sit there and I'd watch a whole James Bond film from start to finish when I was 3, and I used to watch the A-Team from start to finish. And she said that was so rare for a 3-year-old kid to sit there and be glued to the A-Team and for James Bond for so long. So
I love the
yeah,
18.
but I
That's
don't
a
know. It
great
must have been a Roger. I presume it must have been a Roger Moore or Sean Connery one on TV in England. But I'd love to know if I ever invent a time machine, I'll go back and I'll find out what was my first James Bond film. Yeah.
Have you been to any of the locations where they filmed?
Oh yeah, Amsterdam, New York, Thailand. Yeah,
So
London.
my husband, well, of course, the London. For our listeners, Joe lives in London or
Greater
Essex,
London. Yeah, just
Greater
outside.
London,
Yeah, yeah,
Essex.
it's just outside of
Yes.
London.
My husband and I actually visited Matera, which is
Oh
where that
right.
last film where he does the donuts in his car and shoots out the window to get out
Yeah.
of a tough situation. And we actually went there because there's a detective show that's filmed there called Tatarani, and she's an Italian prosecutor. It's a great, great show. But once we got there and we stood in that area, we're like, oh my gosh, this is where the James Bond movie was filmed.
Yeah.
I love doing that. I love going to those iconic places. And so when I see a movie or a TV show that's filmed in those areas, I can say, oh my gosh, I remember that. I was there. And when we traveled to Europe with our boys for the first time, we flew into Nice and then drove through Monaco into Tuscany. And I insisted on going to Rome, even though it really wasn't a place that my husband wanted to go back to. He had been stationed in Italy as a kid.
Oh, right. Okay.
And Rome didn't hold wonderful memories for him because he was like a 10-year-old and it would be hot and they'd go to the Vatican. And anyway, but I wanted to make sure the boys saw a couple of truly iconic places so that when they got back home, they were 8 and 10, almost 11. When we got back home to Montana, which is a pretty provincial place and pretty isolated, that they could see things in school and say, oh yeah, we went to the Colosseum, we were there.
Yeah, Rome's amazing. It's probably, it's really up there with the most amazing places I've visited.
Agreed.
I haven't visited everywhere in the world, but at the moment it's up. Yeah.
What I loved about it is when we arrived, we had driven down from Tuscany through Orvieto and went to Rome and spent a couple nights there. Our first day there, we got there in the late afternoon, so we took a little nap and then went out for a late dinner because, in Rome you eat late. We went out for a late dinner and decided at the last minute to jump on the train and go to the Colosseum. It was about almost 11 o'clock at night when we came up out of the very low ground train station at the Colosseum. It's like 200 feet below the surface. And I remember coming up out of that escalator and looking across the street because, listeners, if you haven't been to Rome before, I didn't really have any expectations. I just knew I wanted to see these iconic places with my kids so that they would see them in movies and read about them. And they actually had seen the Colosseum in a Scooby-Doo episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to give them that opportunity because we were seeing a lot of places that they wouldn't recognize in school. And I'll never forget coming up out of the escalator. It's 11 o'clock at night. There's a full moon. And as soon as you step off of the escalator and out the door, the Colosseum looms over you. And it was dark with a full moon dangling above it, and it glows from the inside. And I will never forget that moment because it was so awe-inspiring. I'm used to being awed by nature. But this was so immense. It just took my breath away. You can't describe how big this place is. And you can't understand it in pictures, even with people in it where you can see they look like little ants. But even so, to see it in person and how humongous it is, and then hear the stories about how they would block it off at the base and fill it with water and have battleship entertainment inside it. Like you hear things like that and then you see it. Anyway, I digress. I love that.
Yeah,
So
it's an amazing place. Incredible.
I love that you've seen some of these places. Do you think your love for music and those films in particular and starting this fan club, generating this excitement with other people, being able to share the excitement with other people, do you think that has influenced your career or any particular part of your career?
Yeah, I think so. I'm always interested in creative things, filmmaking and music, and I'm always in awe of how they create these things. Yeah, and how Paul McCartney still has so many melodies in him after all these years, and he's just knocking out melodies like "We Make Cups of Tea" in England. I'm just completely in awe by that.
So, when you think about your expertise, can you tell a story about a time that you were really successful with that? And maybe we can loop in how that creativity flows through you because of that recognition that it's never ending.
Yeah, I would say the thing that I always point to is when I work for a hospice. So I don't. You have hospices in the States, don't you?
Yeah,
But
end of life care.
yeah, and so over here they don't get much government funding. They get a tiny little bit, and they need to raise millions a year just to stay open. And sadly, the one I was raising money for, but it's from the James Bond fan club, it's a children's hospice. It's London's first and oldest children's hospice. Sadly, had to close because the cost of living crisis has just crushed them. Yeah, so it's just devastating that children's end of life care has been cut off like that, and the government didn't step in to help them. But anyway, so I was actually working for a hospice, so I raised money for a hospice in my spare time, and people have got this misconceptions that they're horrible, miserable places that are grey, dark, and stink of bleach, and everyone just sits there waiting to die. But there's a lot of myths around hospice care. So in England, people go to hospice for socialising, events and stuff. People go there and come out alive again because people just think it's a death sentence. People go there for treatment and come out again. They might live a healthy life for another 40, 50 years again. But the misconception around those hospices, and it's actually the happiest place I've ever worked. And when I said kind of I'm working at a hospice, people are like, oh God, I bet that's depressing. But it's actually, no, it's the happiest place I've ever worked. And if you go in these hospices, you will hear laughter, you'll see bright gardens, beautiful flowers, beautiful buildings, colour, people talking, people having fun. So it's a real eye opener. And there's so many misconceptions that just aren't true. But their tone of voice was just feeding those misconceptions, because their tone of voice was very old fashioned, very clinical, very cold, very formal. So yeah, I changed their tone of voice for the better, and I increased the fundraising, and that's just something I really like doing, helping people that really need it.
I love that. What was one of the shifts that you made? Was there a particular email campaign or event or invitation?
A lot of it was kind of what I did was the emotional storytelling, which was, a lot of these stories are very sad about someone at the end of their life, but they weren't all stories about people at the end of their life. But obviously, as a hospice, a lot of them were. But I'm really happy that people used to read them, and they used to cry, and then they used to laugh, then they used to cry again, and then they end up laughing by the end of the story. So these are people who just lost loved ones, and I could make them laugh and cry. And that's really, that emotional storytelling is what helped the hospice and helped resonate with the public. And this is what the hospice is about. The hospice really is about life and laughter, rather than death and misery.
And that's not unlike how we use music and film, right? To bring us to emotional places, highs and lows of emotional places. I mean, Paul McCartney songs, My Baby's Request is one of my favorites and one of his least known. When the moon laid his head on a pillow and the stars all settled down for a rest. Just do me one small favor, I beg you. Play me my baby request.
A hidden gem. There's so many hidden gems that could happily sit on Abbey Road or Revolver. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. So you're still volunteering to raise funds for hospice for different hospice organizations, is that right?
I've got to find a new one, and I have found a new one, but I haven't done anything for them yet. I've just switched over because they've taken the overspill for the children. So all's not lost, but it's still tragic that London's first and oldest children's hospice has had to close because they can't afford to keep the lights on.
That's so crazy to me that would not be a system that would be, supported. So if you could, I know that nonprofits are harder these days, partly because people expect them to not pay and support their employees, which I was thinking about that. I work with a lot of nonprofits here in Montana, and I remember hearing somebody complain about the administrative costs of running a nonprofit, and even the very best ones are right around 10%, which is so small. It's smaller than the government overhead for what they do administratively. And I said to one of these people who professes to be, progressive, and I said, so what you're suggesting is that this nonprofit shouldn't pay their employees a living wage so that they can afford to live within the community that they're serving. Is that what you're suggesting? And the person was, oh, I didn't think of it that way. I said, and what you're also suggesting is that they shouldn't be able to train their employees, spend money on the development of their employees so that their employees continue to grow and be satisfied in their jobs. Is that what you're suggesting? And they're like, well, that's not what I was thinking. And I said, well, that's what you're saying, is that a nonprofit who provides so much for the community shouldn't also provide that in the culture of their organization. Is that, because that's what I'm hearing. And he's like, oh, I guess I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, it's I mean, you're never gonna really, if you're not the CEO of a charity, you're never gonna get rich working for a charity, but that's not really what it's all about. And I would love to work for another charity, but seems like 75% of the world, everyone's watching their pennies at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, for good reason.
Yes.
However, so when you think about the kind of work you'd like to do, knowing that it is likely to be a private industry, for-profit organization, what would that be? I mean, obviously, you have to be doing something that is meaningful to you. You're not going to go work for a company that makes your skin crawl or makes you want to vomit every time you hear their mission statement because they're so far away from actually activating on that mission statement or honoring it. So what would that look like?
I love helping people, and that's why I love my time at the hospice so much. That's why I love using the James Bond fan club to raise money for charity. So if I could work for a mental health charity, because I'm very vocal about mental health on LinkedIn after my own struggles, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, and or a children's charity, that would, because I love writing as well. So if I can use my skills to make the world a better place, and we have become nastier and angrier since the pandemic. I've noticed a shift. I noticed a shift as soon as COVID hit the UK. People started getting angrier, less patient, nastier. People throwing their weight around, flexing their muscles. People who suddenly worked in first gear all the time suddenly took it up to third gear. So yeah, I think just since the pandemic, all the crises that we've lived through, and the cost of living, I think, if I can do something good for the world, that would really mean a lot.
Yeah, mental health organization for sure makes sense.
Yeah.
I wonder, when you think about the kind of writing that you've done in the past that has been useful, have you considered turning your James Bond club into a nonprofit that then could support you in the work that you want to do?
I could do. I mean, I use it as a vehicle to raise money. I've done a evening with James Bond stars. I've interviewed people from the James Bond series. I interviewed Dame Joanna Lumley. She's probably not that well known in the States, but she's a big name here, and she was in George Lazenby's film. But yeah, I've never really thought of it like that. So maybe, yeah.
Huh. Maybe this is an idea that's setting behind the scenes. I could imagine having like a subscription, like what they do on Substack, where you can have the free material, but then if you want additional content, you have a paid subscription.
Yeah, it's got I think it's got about 40,000 members at the moment, so I should have charged them all £1 or something.
There you go, and then that's like a half a year of your income, right there.
Well, no, not in England. That's like a year's salary in England. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I think you get paid more. I think you get paid better in the States.
Well, we also, that's a whole other thing. There are a lot of us that don't here. Unfortunately, and it's getting bigger.
And stuff. Yeah.
That community of people is getting bigger.
Yeah.
I can tell you, even right here in Montana, Helena, Montana, which when we moved here in 1999, we moved from Washington, D.C. My husband took a $10,000 a year pay cut to work for a nonprofit. And I gave up my job so that I could be mostly at home with my kid. Long story longer, that did not last very long for me because it turns out I'm not great at being at home, a little hyperactive.
Right, okay.
And I realized that my kid really didn't benefit from me spending so much time with him. So I started, bringing him out to see other kids and meet other kids, and started working in the evenings, teaching classes at the local community college, then started my own business. Apparently, I'm not an at-home mom kind of person, even though I really wanted to be. But what was interesting was that I sold a bunch of my stock that I had purchased in the company I was working for in Washington, D.C., and had to do something with it to avoid significant taxes because we had to hold on to our cash because I wasn't really working. And so we ended up buying a house in 2000 for $125,000, which in the U.S. isn't, even in 2000, that wasn't very much money. But within a couple of years, it increased in value a lot, substantially.
Yeah,
we refinanced. Now, Helena in particular in Montana, and all of Montana, is known as the least affordable place to live in the United States.
Really? Blimey. I mean,
worse than New York City, worse than San Francisco. And it's not because the cost itself is more, it's that our salaries and hourly wages have not caught up to the cost of living in terms of rent and purchasing a house.
Yeah.
So
same in the UK.
So I hear that.
It's a big problem that's not spoken about enough.
Right, exactly. Again, contributing to mental health issues, but also contributing to that anger that you're talking about. Because
massively, yeah.
I think about COVID as it started out as being just people needing to control something. I think that's why people in some ways got so mean or flexing their muscles no matter where they were, because they needed to control something because everything felt so out of control. So, yeah. When you think about the work that you've done in the past, what is a story? You mentioned that you would hear from people who are just going through the loss of a loved one, that your writing helped them go through a variety of emotions and express what was going on internally by reading what you were writing. What's another?
Yeah, I am. The toughest ones were always not speaking to a relative who not speaking to someone who just lost husband, dad, brother, wife, whatever it may be. The toughest ones were always the people who knew they were reaching the end and they weren't old enough to die. And I remember I was writing a story about one lady. She was late 50s, and I remember her words said, she said, No, she just found love, and they just bought a house, their dream house, and she said just as things were going right, it's been taken away from me. And I remember those words really, really hit home. And I was trying to hold it together while I was talking to her, and then I just ran out of that room and started crying because that was the most difficult one, speaking to somebody who knew the end was coming before their time.
Mm. Mm. Wow. It takes a special kind of person to be able to have that conversation.
Yeah, it
On both
was.
sides,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
especially the journalist or, the person writing about
yeah.
it.
It was tough. And I remember as well. One thing points out, I would interview men about they just lost a wife or daughter or whoever, and you could see them they wanted to cry, but they were holding it in because they were talking to another man and another stranger. And I remember one guy went round his house with his 17-year-old daughter, and he just lost his wife, her mum, and he was talking, and he sort of turned his face away from me and ran out the room because he was crying, and because he didn't want to cry in front of me, and I remember saying, it's okay. Men can cry, and you can cry in front of another man who you don't know very well, who's just turned up at your house. But that really sticks out as well because he just felt so. I can't cry. I'm a man. One, I'm a man. Two, he's another man. I can't possibly cry. Can't possibly cry in front of another man. But we've got that. We've got to change that.
You just reminded me of what you were writing on LinkedIn that generated so much friction and cruelty, comments that were absurd about you actually sharing your feelings about what was going on, your emotional response to another layoff. And where do you think that comes from? Because it's not just men. Women were responding that way too.
Yeah, I've written about my mental health in the Telegraph. It's a big paper over here. I've been on BBC Radio 4. Obviously, your listeners would have heard of BBC. I've been on GB News to talk about it, which is a channel over here. And all these outlets posted my article on Facebook, Twitter, and I could not believe the abuse I was getting. I had to stop reading. It was anything from my looks to my personality. And this was on Facebook and Twitter. Okay, Facebook and Twitter, you expect it. And it was all men. It was 99.9%. Well, actually, it was 100% men on Facebook and Twitter. And then when I talk about it on LinkedIn, it's 99.9% of the time it is guys, and they're often of the same age, kind of Gen X. But yeah, the abuse I've received, even on LinkedIn, I've had slurs about, well, I'm not gay for starters, which is a major fault in that. But yeah, recently I was called the F word, for a derogatory name for a derogatory term for a gay man. Yeah, being told to man up, grow up hair. I mean, man up and grow up hair is probably more some of the more polite comments. Yeah, I mean, the other ones I've received would turn the air blue. But you can imagine, yeah. And it is mainly from men, and I've noticed a pattern. And I've said this before. I'm not saying all men, because I know loads of Gen X males that are sort of the earth guys, but there does seem to be a pattern, an obvious pattern, which is too hard to ignore.
Right.
Yeah.
What about the number of people that turned up to support you? What do you think was a percentage, especially on LinkedIn?
Oh, massively. The thing is, kind of out of all the people that commented on my post, I would say kind of probably 93% people have been as good as gold and brilliant. But then you get the 7-8% who aren't, and their comments do kind of stick. And sometimes I could write a post and I get 1,000 people wishing me well, and then I get one guy telling me, abusing me.
Right.
And sometimes I've got better at it, but sometimes that it didn't feel like 1,000 brilliant comments and one nasty one. Sometimes it felt like 1,000 nasty comments and one good one. Yeah.
I asked that question because I think a lot of us get stuck in there. And there are two reasons this is important to me. I mean, it's all related to the story that we're telling externally and then how it affects us internally. So when you think about it, I'll tell you a story to demonstrate it. One of my closest friends is an amazing musician. She was writing songs, singing with her band. She has this ethereal high voice. And when we were singing together, our harmonies were so tight and we could get really complicated in our harmonies. And it would just make all the hairs on the back of your neck go up. And she moved away, so we weren't singing together as much, but she called me one time and she was crying. She said, I think I should just stop. I think maybe I'm going to quit. And I said, why? And she said, well, we had this gig the other night at a brewery. And at the end of the gig, this guy came up to me and told me I was hurting his ears, that the songs were great, but that I should have somebody else singing them because my voice just wasn't, it was too high, too tinny, whatever the words he used. And I said, oh, okay, I hear you. How many people were at the gig? And she said, I don't know. I said, well, think about it. How many people were there at the beginning? And then by the end of the night, like how many people were in and out throughout the evening? She said, oh, it was a pretty busy night. I said, did anybody stay for the whole 2 sets that you guys performed? She's like, yeah. I said, did you sell any CDs? They had just released a CD. This was about 10 years ago or 8 years ago. And she's like, well, yeah, a bunch of people bought them. I said, how many? She said, I don't know, 10, 12. And I said, okay, how many people came up to you and told you how wonderful you were? And she's like, well, I don't know. And I said, well, think about it. She's like, I don't know, Sarah. And I said, okay, how many of those people are people you already knew that were your friends that you dismissed their compliments? A handful. Okay, but how many weren't? How many were new to you? How many people came up to you after and said, oh my gosh, I've never heard you guys before. When are you playing next? Do you have any music with you? She's like, a few. And I said, okay, so what you're suggesting is that their opinions don't matter.
Yeah.
That you're dismissing them because they don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And she got really quiet. I said, whatever the reason he said that, and I could come up with all kinds of reasons, because she is this tall, gorgeous, blonde woman. I mean, she is gorgeous. And this guy clearly knew that the only way she was going to get his attention, or he was going to get her attention in any way, was to insult her.
Yeah.
And I said, this is a guy that in high school was a total jerk because nobody paid attention to him.
Yeah.
And she got really quiet. I said, are you going to let him win? Mm-hmm. This one guy. So the problem wasn't just that she was listening to all these, that she was taking his over all of these other people. The problem was that that's how she was telling the story.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it, actually, how you've described that. Kind of are the people who complimented you, are they nothing? Yeah, it's a really good way of looking at it.
Do they not matter?
Yeah.
And it's not like your mom is telling you, oh, you're so beautiful. Yeah. You have such a great voice. These are total strangers. You know nothing about them. And they're walking up to you and telling you how wonderful you are. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the other aspect of this that I think is even more critical, because that's one, your internal message that's damaging you and limiting your potential because you're listening to, right? And it's going to make you second guess yourself. It's going to make you think, maybe I shouldn't be sharing this, or maybe I shouldn't sing anymore. I should just give this up. I'm hurting people's ears, right? So you're limiting the potential to positively affect the other people that do love what you're putting out there. But even more importantly, we are giving voice to this small percentage of people and making it feel like that's what the world is like.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely, we need to address it. And it's still this tiny percentage that we're saying, oh, the world is just horrible. Look at all these horrible people out there.
Yeah. And most people are good. That's the thing. But you do probably, I mean, that night she probably lost sight of that most people would love to hear her voice. And she probably lost sight of that a bit and probably thought,
She did. She almost gave it up.
most
She
people are
almost quit
nasty. Yeah,
singing.
you almost quit it. Yeah. Yeah.
And here we come back to this music and how it affects us.
Yeah.
What if Paul
I'm glad you
McCartney
didn't give it
said,
up.
oh yeah, My Baby's Request, that's my worst song. I'm just not going to perform it anymore. We're not going to record that one. Because it's the smallest, right?
Yeah.
It's the one that only 100,000 people
The
know
hardcore
and
fans
love,
know, yeah.
right? It's only
Yeah.
100,000. Of the 40 million, 40 billion people that love my music, that's only
Yeah.
100,000. It's a drop in the bucket. But I'm that drop.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I needed to hear it.
Mhm. It's an interesting choice.
Yeah, and I don't even have positivity in my top StrengthsFinder talents. But I think this comes from my strategic brain. Knowing the fastest, most efficient route from point A to point B gives me a very realistic perspective on what the truth is behind it.
I also, I've learned how to deal with it. You know, that there's so many guys who come up to your friend who I've experienced trying to silence me for talking about mental health and stuff. And when I first started it did bother a bit. I'm actually now bringing it on. Like I want you to abuse me, because I take it as a compliment. If they've clicked on, if they've stopped at my post, clicked it, taken time out of their time to read it, and taken time out of their time to give me their time and energy, I take it as a massive compliment. And what I do, I kill them with kindness now. So I just say, "Hi, Gary. Thanks so much for taking the time out to comment on my post. I'm flattered. Can I return the compliment?" Because
I love
their
it.
words are designed to hurt you.
Right.
And if you let them know that you're hurt, they win. So if you let them know that you're not hurt, they're going to be annoyed.
Yeah, well, and I think what I love about that approach, beyond the killing them with kindness, is that you are acknowledging that they have some very strong feelings about this. It's how I talk to a child that's throwing a tantrum. I don't tell them, stop throwing a tantrum.
Mm-hmm.
That's not helpful. Stop throwing a tantrum. You know, you can't reason with a 3-year-old or 2-year-old throwing a tantrum, but you can say, I can see you're having some really big feelings right now. Let's just sit here quietly together and you can work through those feelings. I'm not going to spank you. I'm not going to tell you you're a horrible person for throwing a tantrum, because clearly my words triggered some very strong feelings for you.
Yeah. That's another one I use. If sometimes I kill them with kindness, sometimes I say I've clearly stirred up emotions in you. I'd be a pretty crap copywriter if I wouldn't be able to do that. So thanks for the compliment.
I love that.
And I can just imagine Gary sitting there fuming.
Yep. Because he didn't have the effect he wanted to.
Yeah.
I hate to do this, but it's a comparison with children throwing tantrums. I mean, that's basically the same thing.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. I keep coming back to this idea that the content you're creating can be a powerful tool for whoever chooses to hire you and take that for exactly what it is, the powerful writing that you can share.
Hopefully, yeah. Actually, funnily enough, this afternoon, a couple of hours ago, some guy commented on one of my posts and says, "You get more likes and engagement than some of the world's biggest brands who put out content on here." And then he said something like, "Anyone would be lucky to have you, even those massive brands." And that was really nice to. That was a real nice compliment, you know. So there are nice guys in the world.
There are. Of course there are. And there's the thing. I mean, you come back to, what is the impact you want to have? This is my friend Kimberly Davis does this. She just has so much great material out there, so much great content. And the first thing she talks about is how do you want to show up in the world? What impact do you want to have? And I think about that all the time. And you are having this impact in significant ways. You're getting all of this engagement. Even the negative engagement is sending messages. One of the things I keep coming back to is those comments that are so abusive say more about that person than they do about you, right? We know that when we're reading it directed at somebody else. When you see somebody being abusive to somebody else's content, you're like, man, that guy's a jerk. Right?
Yeah.
Or worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
we don't tend to use that word in England, jerk. So we use a strong word. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I don't have any rules on this podcast. So what is asshole? Like, wow, this guy.
We use that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I always think, wow, you must be really lonely.
Yeah. I'm really miserable and really unhappy that your life has never got to where you wanted it to be. Yeah.
Right. You must be really lonely. And I think about how much easier it is for us to see that on in somebody else's life.
Yeah.
You know, when you read a post by somebody who writes similarly to you or writes about content that or issues that are dear to you, and you see the abuse underneath, and it's not the person's content that you are judging at that point. It's like, wow, that guy's a real dick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's so important to see that. I think about this in a lot of ways because people signal who they are in everything they do. Mm-hmm. And I wrote a negative review about a publisher that I worked with. I went to Google. I was very upset about something that happened, but I didn't write about what horrible people they are. What I did is I said, this is the email I received from the company after my contract was up. It feels slimy to me. I feel like they're holding my book hostage. And so beware. It was great working with them at the beginning, but it's really how they end the relationship that tells you who they really are.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was it. That's all I wrote. And he came back, the owner of this publishing company, came back and wrote this nasty response to my Google review. And it was so defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I don't have to respond to this. He just said exactly who he is himself. Anyone who wants to work with him, you know what you're getting into. If you have any complaints at all, if you feel like he's, the company is doing you wrong, you know how he's going to respond.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh.
We've all worked with people like that, unfortunately.
But here's the thing, Joe, I keep coming back to this. It's such a small percentage of people. We're giving them a really oversized voice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why not to give them a voice, yeah.
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 Yeah. I don't comment usually. I don't respond when I see stuff to people that's abusive, because the moment I respond, it gives them more airtime.
Yeah.
But I will send a personal message, a direct message to the person and say, hey, I'm not responding to this because I don't want to give them any more airtime. But just so you know, this isn't about you.
Yeah. And back them up a bit. Yeah. It's amazing how many people, we all see things every day that we're not interested in. And it's amazing how many people stop to take time out of their day to comment on a LinkedIn post that they think belongs on Facebook. Why would you even do that? For a start, it pushes the post that you don't like to the top of your feed.
Exactly.
I wonder if it's these people's first day on the internet. But I think Ricky Gervais said it. He said it's like walking down the street and seeing an advert for guitar lessons in the window and saying, but I don't need guitar lessons. I can't claim ownership of that one. That was Ricky Gervais who said that. But
he is hilarious. But it's definitely pointing out the obvious. Yeah, it's definitely pointing out the obvious. Okay. Well, Joe, let's wrap this back around to your music and movie obsession. When you think about 007, you think about what it is that attracts you to these films and what attracts you to Paul McCartney and the legacy that is the Beatles.
I love clothes as well. I love buying clothes, but it's everything. You know, in a James Bond film, you've got the set design, you've got the suits, like from the 60s right through to the 70s and 80s, how they change and get wider and skinnier. You've got the beautiful women, you've got the scenery, you've got the locations, you've got the gadgets, you've got the stunts. Like so much creativity goes into it, and it's not just if it's not just a Beatles album. You've got the fashion, you've got the design of the sleeve, you've got the lyrics, you've got George Martin who was producing it. So there's so many intricacies to all these things, and I mean, I could just whittle away hours and hours looking at James Bond suits, really, like through the cuts of the trousers and stuff for the villains wore and stuff, because it's just one aspect of it, isn't it? But it's not just about the action and the girls and the guns. It's about the suits they wear and stuff and the set design.
So what I'm hearing is that you love both of these partly because you acknowledge the complexity and all of the different pieces and parts that go into creating the vision that people have and combine together to make it happen.
Yeah, and if, someone thought to give Dr. No, the first villain, that blazer with the high collar,
right,
which has become quite iconic as a villain's cut, but someone made that decision, he's going to wear this suit jacket, and that was 1962, and it's still iconic.
Oh, wow.
And someone decided to give, in Live and Let Die, Roger Moore's Yaphet Kotto, the villains, he decided to give them garish suits with big lapels and make them as stylish as Bond. They look like they got their suits from the same tailor as Bond. So someone made that decision, okay, we're going to put them in suits as nice as Bond. And it's all stuff like that, the colours of the suits, the cuts of the suits.
Right. The bad guy as soon as he steps on stage.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, the endless possibilities, the endless moments that will stay with us. My friend Lynn Casey calls it the long tail of these things, how long they last and how iconic they become. I can see why I can see the combination and how it has evolved for you into your personal brand in terms of your endless curiosity. How many different pieces come together to create something so meaningful, so powerful, so iconic. And the endless creativity, the fact that it just continues year over year over year. The first thing you said was about Paul McCartney and how lyrics and music continue to fill his head after decades of creating.
Yeah.
That it doesn't end if we don't let it end.
Yeah, and has he not run out of melodies?
No.
That's what I often think. Surely he's going to sit down at the piano and go, I've got nothing left to give. I'm all out of melodies. But it does. What is he, 83 now? And it has 84, I think. No, 83. 83, yeah. And it hasn't stopped yet. It's madness.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that comment on your post from that guy saying anyone would be lucky to have you working with them is absolutely true. I totally agree. And for our listeners, all of Joe's links will be in the show notes associated with this podcast episode at elkinsconsulting.com. And if one of these parts of the conversation made you think about ways that you can contribute, maybe you are somebody that can help him monetize the James Bond Club so that he can make his own job for himself. and have people who will support this so that he can continue to generate the thoughtful, intuitive content that he's been creating without getting paid for it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Let's see what happens with this. It only takes one person, the right person, to hear something like this or to see your content to change things.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Joe, thank you so much for joining me today. It's really
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, and a quick shout out to Thomas Jackson, who wrote me a message and said, "You really need to interview Joe Emery."
Yeah, he said.
He's such a good guy.
Yeah,
and I'm like, all right. So Thomas Jackson, thank you for that great nudge. It's exactly what we needed. And Joe, thank you again for your time.
Thank you. I hope some people find me interesting.
Well, I do. Listeners, now it's your turn. What is it that drove you to become a fan of something? What is your obsession? Have you ever thought about where that could lead you or how it has contributed to where you are now? I think about a lot of the things in my childhood that made me want to meet people or to learn something or to read more. And I'm curious what that is for you. And the other thing I want to know is, what are you doing when it comes to seeing the one comment that is mean or the one boss who treated you badly? Are you still holding on to that? Or are you starting to see it for exactly what it is, that those people who are cruel, they have their own reason for being that? And when you give them the greater voice over the people who are kind, you're giving them this power, and you're taking away and reducing the power of people who are doing good in the world. The people who are coming to you and saying, "Great job. I love your music. I love your writing. What you said meant something to me." Let's change that. Thanks for listening to Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Well.
You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.